Hey, what's going on? This is Tyler with Black Diamond Softball and Fitness, and you've got a brand new episode of the Foul Pole to Foul Pole Clips. What I've been doing during the month of December is going back and revisiting some of the episodes from the past and bringing out some of the key points that I really want you guys to pay attention to. On this one, we sit down with Mandi Balduf, and she talks about parents and the kids' relationship and making sure the parents aren't trying to do everything for them. Allow the kids to fail, allow the kids to go through their journey, and not be lawnmower parents. Check it out. And well, if I don't go D1, I'm going to let some folks down because she is good, but she's good in this area. Like she hasn't gotten out and played higher level and played too much, national level competition. So she hasn't had a taste of that. So when you're good in your little area and then people start putting this, oh man, she's going D1, she's going D1. Dude, she plays 12U or she plays 14. You have no idea. Don't put that pressure on her.
Don't put that pressure, and it's such a disservice because again, it's beyond. It's not just about softball, especially for females. Like we're not going to go play pro. You know what I mean? Like these next 4 years for those kids are everything, and so I want to make sure that they're making a smart decision off the academics first. Can you go there and play? Yeah, but you might not play till your junior year. Whereas if you go over here, you could be maybe an All-American for the first 2 years.
Yeah.
I definitely, recruiting at Chowan, I lost a lot of kids in that area to D3s or the D1s, but you got to find your fit. And I think at 7th grade, I think if you could maybe, take her, obviously camps are a big part of the recruiting process, and make sure we're not just camping at all the D1 schools that are emailing you. Yeah. Take these kids to the local NAI and D3, because those are the coaches that can actually communicate directly with these kids right now. And it gets them that side of thing. It gets kids comfortable with conversing and talking and building those soft skills, but it gives them something different to see. You know what I mean? So I think if you can expose them to all levels, and usually that starts through camp, let's not just go to all the big camps that you can find. Let's find those NAIs and the D3s and the D2s in your local area before you start looking at the D1s.
Yeah. I think too, kind of going off of that a little bit, I think these young players have got to learn how to speak to coaches. They're putting their heads down and they're just walking past them and it's like, hey, how are you? And they won't even answer a question. And my kids are like that too. And I'm like, wait a minute, your daddy's on posting videos and doing it. And I wasn't like that all the time either, but you kind of have to learn it. Like, take a speech class in high school. Tell me, explain to me what the biggest disconnect is when it comes to these kids and not being able to talk about themselves to a potential college coach.
Tyler, because they don't have to do it now for themselves. Their moms and dads do literally everything. We used to have the helicopter parents who were just around, and then my later years of my career, it was lawnmower parents. They'll mow everything away, whether it's good or bad, just for this path, but it sets these kids up for failure in the long run. Teaching a kid, and again, Tyler, that's why I meet with every player and every family before I offer to work with them. Is we have these Zoom calls. I'm going to make you uncomfortable because I need you to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And then you need to see me tell mom and dad to stay in their place when they start to try to answer for you. Right? This isn't, for me, it's not just growing the kids, but I've got to get a hold of these parents sometimes too and tell them what they need to hear in this process. You do not answer for her. Look, Tyler, let them mumble and stumble and bumble their way through this. It's the only way they get experience and practice. And it's going to be awkward. So what? Yeah. Let these kids, those soft skills of time management and conflict resolution. And when you get to camps, that is your one opportunity, whether you're a projected D1, D2, that is your opportunity where you can literally talk to a coach about whatever really you want besides recruiting for some levels. But that's your opportunity to get in front of the D1 coach and have that engagement. But a lot of them, social media has done it. Parents have done it for them. So they don't really necessarily know how. Tyler, they don't even have to call to order a pizza anymore.
Right. Yeah.
I mean,
society has done a lot of different things to the recruiting element that, and there's so many different elements in the recruiting process that you can't just bank on one and go, okay, I'm going to do this really well. Because you could be the number one best athlete but can't speak in front of people. So they don't
There you
they
go.
don't know you. They don't have a personality on you, and
Yeah.
it's tough. That's
You you
another
you
part
you
of
can
it.
be you can be physically ready to play your sport at the next level. You can have the grades and you can have the character all you want, but if you don't have the motivation behind the scenes to do your emails and to proactively put yourself out there,
Mhm.
whether they answer or not, that's the difference. Is I can have all of that, but if a kid is not has very little time management or organizational skills or organizing the responsibilities, I don't usually take those kind of kids on because they're not going to be ready for me.
Right.
They're not going to be ready for the value that I'm going to bring because it's always going to be me just pushing and asking and begging, and this isn't my journey. Like I've played my ball. I'm trying to get you to where you want to be, and if this is your goal, then you've got to be ready for the activity that happens behind the scenes. And these kids aren't because they haven't had to be. They haven't been held responsible to be.
Yeah.
And what's the point if I'm going to get a participation trophy? Why in the heck would I want to work as hard anyways?
Yeah. That's a good point. I think we've oversimplified things to the point where when push comes to shove and they're adults and they're out of the house, we're setting up for a couple of years of failure that they're going to have to deal with this failure at that age versus dealing with the failure at a younger age and being able to work through it. Because I think failure is such a huge part of success. Failure is my favorite word. If you're watching my podcast or go to any of my clinics or do any of the stuff that I do, man, I love talking about failure because I think it's powerful. And I think if we push off that big failure to where it's like, oh man, I've got to make a big time adjustment here. If we push that off to when they're in their 18, 19, 20 years old, man, we are doing them a disservice. And we have to, as parents, coaches, we gotta get away from that. So
Absolutely. I mean, I think, like you said, just get back to keeping it, we've simplified some things, I think maybe too much. And we put a lot of focus into areas that really that's not maybe where we should be focused on and just
mhm,
get back to building relationships with coaches because that's what recruiting is.
mhm,
It's not going to be based off of an email I send them or a video they see on YouTube. It's going to be how does this kid make me feel?
yeah,
How how is she building that relationship? Does she really want to play at this school? Or does she want to play for me? Because I might not be at the school. And I want my kids to make sure that they're making decisions off of what's best for them and
right,
not maybe who the coach is. Right. Like I know you want to play for Pat Murphy, but is Pat Murphy going to be at Alabama forever? We don't know. Go to Alabama because it's a really dang good school with a great education,
yeah.
not because it's Pat Murphy coaching it.
I'm going to ask you about the transfer portal.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm going to preface the question like this. Your job, your passion is to get these students into the right situation. And the transfer portal is out there and it can be used the right way, but we also know it can be used the wrong way. The transfer portal has always been there. It's always been there in one capacity or the other.
Correct.
I think now football has kind of done it. So if football does it, everybody starts to pay attention to the transfer portal. So we start to make a big stink about it on the softball side of it. So now it's a popular topic. What are your thoughts on the transfer portal and what does that do for you as a scout?
Well, obviously, it has impacted the high school athlete to such a greater extent than it ever used to.
Mhm.
I mean, high school kids used to only have to compete against junior college kids, and now you're competing against not just junior college kids, but kids who have time in at a 4-year school,
Yeah.
who have college play underneath their belt. So now you've got you're competing against that now. I think the portal, like you said, is good for some scenarios, and it's not always good for some. So some kids who use it need it. Absolutely, it's there for a reason. But if you're not a pitcher, I would love to see the numbers on those kids that actually find another landing spot. Because for me, it's always pitching. I've never been asked for anything outside of a transfer pitcher.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you're a dime a dozen middle infielder, outfielder, I would love to see the numbers on where those kids end up.
Yeah.
The statistics, I would love to see how many kids who enter actually find something else. For me as a scout, I try to work my kids through this process so they never have to go into it. Again, going back to, I want you to make your decision on what this school's going to mean for you as a student,
Mhm.
as an alum, what that degree is going to mean for you. And so for me, I want my kids making a decision on a school that isn't just 4 years, but it's a 40-year decision. And so that they're happy with where they're at. And that's why I want them starting early so they can get through a lot of that mud and really figure out what is my fit, because I don't want you to have to transfer.
Yeah.
If my kids do transfer, if they do put themselves in the portal, we help them. So I stay with them. We also stay with our kids through junior college. So it's not just like, we get you and then we leave you.
Yeah.
So
You
and
made
I've
it
had
so
very
long.
few, yeah, I've had very few portal kids. And I want to say like like five, honestly, five, and we're all pitchers.
Yeah.
So I haven't had experience with like a middle infielder or an outfielder, but it definitely is part of the conversation these days. And
Has to be.
I think here's something, Tyler, not many people think about. My coach is now at a D1 school. He coached me at Tiffin when we were NAI, but he's a D1 coach now. And he said that he's really, really hesitant to put his freshman and sophomore up for conference awards because he's afraid of them being poached. And it
Wow.
happened early on that this kid was the conference player, freshman, conference player of the year, and she was poached. So I think you've opened up kind of Pandora's box there, where coaches are hesitant about wanting to like really kind of give these kids their honors and their dues,
Yeah.
because you've got coaches coming behind trying to swoop them up, you know? So
Yeah.
that's something that I don't think is really talked about a whole lot, or conversations are being
Mm.
had about it, but it's definitely affecting that side of things. But yeah, I try not to talk about it too much with our kids, but they know it's part of the process, that it's
Right.
there. But I want you to make that decision so you don't have to worry about being in the portal.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, that's got to be scary because you're going right back through that process again of like, where am I going to land? And I think the last I checked, there's still something like 800 athletes, some crazy number like that right now, that
so
sitting in the portal.